Hi there, my name is Sam, one of the founders of Instant, and in this introduction course I'll show you how to build a Shopify page with Instant. We will build this exact page right here from scratch and all without code. In this course we will cover the basics of Instant and introduce more powerful features such as interactions, responsiveness and more. So let's get started. When you create a site, you're presented with three different options: build from scratch, build with sections, and choose a template. For now, let's click on build from scratch and tour the Instant interface. On the left, you can insert different elements, and you can also insert sections, and this is where you can access the template library, where you can choose from hundreds of different pre-built sections and pages. For now, let's go to sections, and then under the category hero, because I want to work with a hero section, let's scroll down a little bit and add this one to our page. Underneath insert, we have the layer panel, and this is where you can see all the layers that your page or section consists of. You can move layers around and also name layers by double clicking on the layer. Underneath we have layouts. This is where you can create new pages and new sections, and where you can change the page settings such as the name, duplicate pages and sections, and also remove them. Underneath we have brand styles, and this is where you can insert the color styles and the text styles that your brand uses, and this will speed up your workflow tremendously and ensure consistency. Last but not least, we have the asset panel, and this is where you can drag and drop the assets you want to use for this site. On the top, you can see the different viewports to see what your page looks like on different devices. And this is of course crucial when optimizing your page or section for example, mobile. Also, you can adjust the size of the canvas manually right here. Then next to it, you can preview to see what we're actually building. And next to that, you can publish. On the right side, we have the style and interaction panel. The style panel essentially gives you all the tools to customize whatever you drag and drop onto the canvas, from the colors to the layout and more. And under interactions, you can create certain click actions and add interactions such as mouse hover animations. Then we also have site settings. If we go to the top left corner, we can access our site settings. Within the general settings, you can create your site identity, upload an icon and change the name of your site. Under members, you can invite members and define a role for each member you're inviting. Then under fonts, you can upload your custom font, and then we have plans and pricing, where you can upgrade your plan. Let's transform this first section, the hero section, into what we want by customizing it. So for this build, I've prepped the builder a little bit. Under brand styles, I've created three different color styles, and within the asset panel, I've uploaded all the assets that we will need for this build. The first thing we should do is take a look at the spacing that exists within this section. So if we take a closer look on the right side of our builder, we can see that there's inside spacing, 64 pixels worth of inside spacing to the top and bottom, and 80 pixels worth of inside spacing to the left and right. To illustrate what spacing is exactly and what the difference is between spacing inside and spacing around, I'm gonna give this section a background color. Then let's head back to the spacing and take a closer look at what this means exactly. So spacing inside is a spacing that exists within a section. So in this case, the outer edge of the section right here, and then where the content within starts. So there's 64 pixels worth of inside spacing between the top of the section and then where the content starts, and the same applies to the left, the right and the bottom. Spacing around is the spacing that exists around a section. So if I add 64 pixels worth of spacing around, then you will see that there's more space around this section. And that's essentially what spacing around and spacing inside is. So let's remove the spacing around and the spacing inside all to 0. Then the next thing we can do is add a image. So go to image and then select the right image, which in this case is the hero image. If we take a closer look to the corners, we can see that a radius is active because we see these nice and round corners. But in this case, I don't want it, so let's delete the radius on this hero section. Select the layer and then under radius, which is set to 16, let's change this to 0 and there is no more round corners. Then we can change the background color into the color we want, which is this lila brand color. There we go. And now let's adjust some of the text. So this should say gummies with 80 milligrams of caffeine. We need a space right here. And then underneath it should say the easiest and best tasting way to stay energized and focused. Let's delete this batch right here and instead drag in our logo. So from the asset panel, we see our logo. Let's drag it on top of the text. The logo right now is slightly too big. That's because the width is set to 500 pixels, a fixed width of 500 pixels. Let's change this to 100. So the logo has a width of 100 pixels and this actually looks really, really good. Then there are two buttons. We only need one. So let's drag this one button outside the layer and then delete the unnecessary button layer. And then this should say feel awake today. Now let's customize this button further. So it's white, we want it to be green. So let's head down to the fill color of this button and change this to the green color. There's a gray border. I want this border to be black. So let's change this to black. And then there's a radius active as well, which is resulting in these nice and round corners. But in this case, I want sharp corners. So let's delete the radius to 0. Then I want this button to be a little bit bigger. And to do this, we need to work with size. So there are different properties that we can work with, which is fit, fill, fixed, and relative. And I'm gonna explain them all to you right now. When we change the width to fill, the button will fill up all the space that is available. So in this case, if we zoom out a little bit, this button is within this layer right here. It's not snapping to the outer edge of this layer because we have inside spacing active, 80 pixels worth of inside spacing to the left and right. If I delete this, you will see that it will actually snap to the outer edge of this layer, but this does not look right. So let's add back this 80 pixels worth of inside spacing. But that's what fill essentially is. When you change a property to fill, the width or the height, it will fill up all the space that is available. Next up, we have fit. With fit, the width or the height will adjust based upon the content within. So it will always make sure that it will fit to the content. So if we make this text larger, feel awake today, discount, you will see that the size or the width of this button will adjust based upon the content within. And that's essentially what the fit property entails. The width or the height will always adjust based upon the content within because it always wants to fit to the content. Next up is fixed. And with fixed, you set a fixed property to the width. So no matter how much content is within this button, if we set this fixed width to 200 pixels and we write in more text, you can see that the width will not be larger than 200 pixels. And that is what fixed size is. And then we have relative. With relative, we can essentially control how much of the available space a element will occupy. So if we change the relative width to 100%, the button will occupy 100% of the space available. If we change this to 50%, the button will occupy 50% of the space available. And that is how position relative works. It works the same way with the width as it does with the height. In this case, 50% looks good. Then the last thing we need to do is make sure that the text is actually in the middle. To do this, we can change the alignment to align from the center. And there we have it. Our first section, the hero section, is complete. To create the trust bar, let's head over to the template library And under banner, we can select this section right here. The first thing we need to do is take a look at this inside spacing property. It's set to 80, but let's change this to 40. Then let's remove this text element and this button because we only want to showcase the logos. And if we click on the ticker element, we can see that there is a lot of spacing around to the bottom. 80 pixels, let's change this to 0. So this section is overall a little bit smaller. Then let's select the entire banner, go down to style and change this to the brand color, the green brand color. And under style, you can also change all the different properties, such as the border, the radius to make corners nice and round, rotate elements, add a shadow to elements and change the opacity. For now, we don't need any of these properties. Let's continue with what we need to do, and that is adding the correct logos. So all these logos in this sticker we don't need, so let's delete them and let's only remain with one logo, and then drag and drop in our logos, which is the Business Insider logo. This is huge right now, and to fix this, let's change the width to fit and then set the height to a fixed height of 30 pixels. Let's delete the Albertson logo, and then under the asset panel, drag in the other logo that we want to use, the Forbes logo. Set the width to fit and the height to 30 pixels. And then also for this logo, fit 30 pixels. And last but not least, the GQ logo, fit and 30 pixels. Then for the aesthetics, I want this logo to be switched with the Glamour logo. Now let's preview to see what we've actually built. And as you can see, we've built a great looking ticker or banner element, but it's moving a little bit too fast. So let's select the ticker layer, go to the right, and then change the speed of the sticker from 50 to 25. Let's preview again, and this already looks way better. And that's it for the trust bar. To create the product benefits section, let's head over to the template library. Under features, we can select this section right here and add it to our page. The way we're going to customize this is by working on one card, this one on the left, making sure that it's spot on. Then we delete the two other cards and duplicate the correct card. So let's zoom in a little bit and make a few tweaks to this card. So the fill color can be set to the green brand color. There's a radius of 12 resulting in these round corners, but I want sharp corners, so let's delete the radius. Then we can also add a border, a black border with a width of 1 pixel, looks really good. Then we need to fill in the correct content, so this should say on the go convenience. The font we want to use is this one right here. Then for the text below, this is the correct text, wherever life takes you, designed for your busy lifestyle. And then we also need to fill in the right image, which is this one right here. There is a small radius on this image of 4. Let's also change this to 0. And then this first card is done. Let's delete these two cards and then duplicate the correct card, and then we can fill in the right content. But before we do that, I want to explain one more concept when it comes to the layout, and that is the gap. So right now, if we select the container layer where the 3 different cards are in, you can see that the gap is set to 16. So there is 16 pixels worth of gap between these 3 cards. If I change this to, let's say, 24, you can see that there is now 24 pixels worth of gap between these cards. And that is essentially how gap works. 24 is actually the right setting. So now let's continue with adding in the right content. The fill color of this second card can be this branded purple color. Then let's also fill in the right content. The image needs to be this image right here. Then for the text, it needs to say no energy depletion, and the text below is this one right here. And then for the other card, let's change the image to the correct image, the blueberry image, or the vitamin image, I should say. Then also fill in the correct text. The final thing I want to do is add a click action to these Learn More buttons. So select the button or the Learn More element, go over to Interactions, and then under Action, you can add a URL. So in this case, I'm going to fill in a example URL, but you can fill in any URL of your Shopify page right in here. Let's do the same thing to the other Learn More buttons. Action, google.com, and then also for this last one right here, interactions, click action, and then a dummy URL. And that's it for the product benefits section. To build the competitor comparison, we can search for the right section under the MISC category, scroll down a little bit, and add this one to our page. The first thing we should do is delete this kicker text element and then fill in the right content right here. Better than the rest. The font we're going to use is this one, the font we've been using throughout this build. And then what we should do is delete all the rows and remain with just one, which we will then customize. So let's delete all the rows except for one, and then we can customize it. So the first row, I'm going to give it a fixed height of 60 pixels. Then I'm going to add some inside spacing to this one on the left. Right now, this text element is sort of glued to the outer edge of this element. I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to add inside spacing to the left and right worth of 20 pixels. Then for this cell, I'm going to delete the inside spacing from 12 to 0. And then I'm going to make sure that the height is set to fill. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the other cell. So delete the inside spacing and set the height to fill. The next thing I'm going to do is add our logo right here. I don't want a text element, but I want our logo. So from the asset panel, let's drag and drop our logo. It's quite big, so let's change the width to fit and the height to 25 pixels. Then let's change some of the text properties. So we're comparing Power Gum to coffee, and this first comparison is the portability. Let's also add the correct fill color. So for this first cell, I want the lila background color. There we have it. For this one right here, I want to work with the purple color, and as you can see, if we zoom in a little bit more, there is still a radius on this element. So let's delete that and then also add a color to this cell on the right. Fill color, the lila color, and as you can see, there's also a radius. So let's delete it as well. And now the first row is complete. Let's duplicate it and then fill in the correct content. To duplicate the row, you can right click on the layer panel and then click on duplicate, or click on Command D. Now let's fill in the correct content. So this is fresh red, which our product is also winning. Great smell, we're also winning. Then we have all day energy, vitamins, and then we have the price. To fill in the price, we need to delete this icon and drag in a text element. So let's do that. And then add in the price, which is 0.35 cents per gum. We need to make the text black so it's more visible and change the size to 18. And then let's copy this text element and paste it into the other row like this. And for a cup of coffee, it's around $4.50 per cup. And we also need to add a $sign right here. Then the last thing we should do is add a button underneath, so we can copy and paste the button from the hero section, copy, and then paste it right here. If we select this button, we can see that the width property is set to relative 50%. This makes the button a little bit too big, so let's just change it to fit, so it will fit to the content, and then add some more inside spacing. So 40 and then 40 as well, or it's actually too big. 24 pixels to the top and bottom, and this should say shop now. Then the last thing I want to do is also add a color to this cell. So let's select it and then add a fill color, and then we're done with the competitor comparison. To build the social proof section, let's head over to the template library. Under the category social proof, we can add this section to our page. The first thing we're going to do is change the background color. Right now it's set to this gray color. Let's change it into the light purple brand color. Then we will select this first slide. This is a slider element, so if we preview this really quickly, you can see that this is indeed a slider. So the way we're going to do this is customize this first slide to our liking, so it's on brand, and then we duplicate it and fill in the right content. So let's start by removing the radius of 20 to 0. Then let's add a black border. Right now it's a gray border, and then the fill color can be this on brand purple color. Then for the image, let's select the right image of Alex. There we have it. There's also a radius on this image of 8. If we take a closer look, you can see the round corners, so let's remove that as well to 0. Then let's fill in the correct text. So this first testimonial should say this right here, and then also fill in the correct name, Alex M, with the correct image right here. So this is a fill. Let's change this to a different image. Look for the second Alex picture, and there we have it. So now let's duplicate this slide and fill in the correct content for the other testimonial. So we have this text element right here. Then this testimonial is from Sarah J. Look for the right photo, image, Sarah, the second one, and then the first one, replace it with the main image of Sarah. Then let's duplicate it one more time for the last testimonial. This is the correct text, and this testimonial was created by Robin S. Let's look for the correct image. Under image, replace, look for the image of Robin, the second one, and then the first one, look for the main image. And there we have it. So let's delete these empty slides because we don't need them. And then we have created the social proof section. Let's quickly preview to see what we have built. And here we have the slider. It's fully functional as well. And that's it for this section. For the most important part of this page, let's head over to the template library. Under the product category, we scroll down and then select this section right here. If you scroll over this section, you see that this part is outlined with a green line, while all the other elements and sections are outlined with a blue line. And the reason for this is that this green line indicates that in this specific section, you're working with dynamic content. And dynamic content can be placeholder content or Shopify content. And since this site is connected to my Shopify store, if we head over to the right under Shopify content, click on Shopify, I can browse through all the different products in my Shopify store and use all of the product data and the integrations I have within Shopify and use it in Instant to build pages for my Shopify store. So let's select this Gummies 6-pack product and then customize this section further. So I don't want 2 images, but just 1. So let's delete this image on the right. And then for this image, if it's selected in the layer panel, we head over to content and then change this from static to dynamic. And as soon as we do this, it will show a dynamic image. In this case, the product image coming from my Shopify store. So let's change it to dynamic. And as you can see here, we have the product image. Then let's change the radius to 0 and add a black border of 1 to the image. This looks right. Then for the title, we can do the same thing. So under content, click on it. We have a static option and a dynamic option. When I click on dynamic, there are different sources that I can select. In this case, I want to work with the product title. So let's click on it. And as you can see, we now have the correct product title. Then let's change the font really quickly to the correct font. This one right here. The price is already set to dynamic. So let's quickly check if this is correct. Price, it's set to dynamic and to the product price. So that's all good. Then we also have a product description, which I want to add. Let's select this content element, go down to content, go from static to dynamic and select the product description. And there we have the product description of this product. Now let's change the background color of this entire section by changing the fill from nothing to this lila brand color and change the button. So this button is now black, but I want the button to be green. The text should be black. And then I also want a outline and remove the radius of 8. So radius set to 0 and let's create a border. A black border of 1. This looks about right. Then I also want to add a quantity select element. This is not by default in this section, but if we go to the insert panel and then under element, under product, we can find the quantity select element. So let's drag and drop this onto the canvas. And what we have just done is that when we preview this, we have now enabled the option to add multiple products to the cart at once. And now let's quickly customize this so it looks more on brand. For the minus icon, let's change the fill color to white. And for the plus icon or element, let's change the fill color to the correct purple color. Then I also want to add a product rating. So again, under the insert panel, elements, product, we have the product rating element. And if you work with any third-party Shopify apps for reviews, this is how it works. So let's drag this onto the canvas and automatically it will fetch the correct review ratings for this product from Judge Me. We also have other integrations with Looks and Stamped, but in this case I have Judge Me installed in my Shopify store, so it will automatically pull this data from Judge Me into Instant. The final thing, I want to decrease the gap a little bit because there's quite a lot of space between these different elements. So let's change this from 40 to 24. This already looks way better. And that's it for this product section. For the last section of this page, let's go to the template library and then under the category MISC, we can add this FAQ section right here. Let's start with changing the background color. So the FAQ layer is selected, go down to style and then change the fill color to this brand color right here. Then let's change some of the content within this accordion. So right here we have the text. This should say what is Power Gum. And then the font, of course, this one. And for this icon, we want a different icon. We want a question mark, and then it should not fill the question mark, but we just want a regular type. There we go. And then let's make our first interaction. So if we quickly preview, scroll all the way down, you can see that quite a lot happens. So of course this element collapses, but also the plus icon changes in a minus icon. But I also want another thing to happen, and that is whenever a layer in this accordion is active, I want the color to be purple, so it stands out more from the other questions. So to do this, let's select this header layer, go to interaction, then set a trigger, in this case an active trigger, so whenever this one is active, it will only do something. And what it will do is change the fill color to the standard color, or nothing in this case, to the branded purple color. Then also for the content layer of this accordion item, we select it, go to interactions, and then add a active trigger, and then change the fill color to the brand color. If we preview this right now, let's scroll down, you can see that whenever this element is active, the color will change. Now let's delete these other two sections, duplicate this first correct section, and then fill in the right content. So let's delete this one and delete that one. And then this first item in the accordion, we duplicate 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, and 4 times. So now let's fill in the correct titles. How does it work? How long should I chew? How many can I take per day? And last but not least, where can I buy power gum? Of course, we can also fill in the answers, but for the sake of this tutorial, we skip this part, but simply by clicking on the content, you can change all of the text inside. And that's it for the FAQ section. We've already added a few interactions to the FAQ section, but now let's add more interactions throughout this page to make it even more dynamic. So the first interaction I want to create is a mouse hover animation to this button. So whenever someone hovers over this button, the color will change. So the button is selected. Let's go to interaction and then add a mouse hover trigger. Then we change the fill to black. So whenever someone hovers over this button, the button will become black. If that's the case, you don't see the text. So we also need to add a mouse hover trigger to the text element. So let's select the text element, go to interactions, add a mouse hover trigger, and then change the color of the text to white. Now let's preview and see what we have done. And as you can see, whenever you hover over this button, the color will change of the button element and the text inside. Let's do the same thing to this button right here. So we select the button, to interactions, add a trigger, a mouse hover, change the fill to black, and the same thing applies to the text element within. Add a trigger, a mouse hover, and then change the color of the text to white. Then let's do the same thing to the CTA on this product section. Select the button and then under interactions, add the mouse hover trigger, change the color to black, and then select the text element within, add a mouse hover trigger and change the color of the text to white. And now let's preview exactly what we have done. So we've added a mouse hover trigger to this button. If we scroll down a little bit more, there is a nice animation on this button. And then also on most important button of this page, the add to cart button. And as you can see, when we click on this, the product is added to the cart. And that's it for interactions. Before we publish this page to our Shopify store, let's make sure it looks nice on every single device. We've built this page in the primary viewport, which is the desktop viewport. Now let's click on the laptop viewport to see what it looks like on this device. And as you can see, there's something weird happening in this hero section. It's probably a spacing issue, and indeed, if we take a look on the right, there is inside spacing to this section, specifically on this viewport of 64 pixels and 64 pixels to the left and right. So let's change this to 0, and that should solve the problem. The rest looks really nice actually. Let's scroll down a little bit. This also still looks fine. This looks good. This looks good. And this also looks good. So let's go to the next viewport, which is the tablet viewport. Again, we can see that there's inside spacing to this section by default. So let's delete it as well. The 32 to the top and bottom and the 32 to the left and right. For the rest, this looks quite good. One thing we might be able to do is change the height of this image a little bit. So let's set this height to 600 pixels so it occupies a bit less space. This still looks very good. This also looks really nice. And now let's head to the last viewport, which is the mobile viewport. And again, we have some inside spacing. So let's delete it. The rest actually looks really good. Then this also looks good. This looks good. This all looks good. And this is where it starts to look a little bit weird. So there's still some inside spacing to this table. If we click on this cell, you can also see that there is inside spacing. And if you click right here, we can reset this value to the normal desktop value. So let's do that for all the different cells, reset all the values. This looks good. Let's also make the logo fit a bit better. So let's change it from a fixed height to fit, so it will fit to the space that is available. And then for the rows that contain text, there's also some different inside spacing settings. So let's also reset all of those cells. And there we have it. Let's scroll down. This still looks really nice. The product section also looks great. And the FAQ section also looks good. Now let's preview to see if we still need to make some changes here and there. On the mobile viewport, everything looks really good. Then let's go to the tablet viewport. This also looks good. Great. Let's make the viewport even bigger. And now that our page is nice and responsive, let's get ready to publish. Before we publish this page to our Shopify store, let's head over to Layouts and give this page a name under Page Settings. Let's call this page Tutorials. And now let's click on Publish to add this page to our Shopify store. When the page is published, you see this notification right here to view the page. So let's click on it to see what it looks like inside our Shopify store. And as you can see, it's fully functional just as we build it. When we go to the Shopify theme editor, here we are on the home page. We can simply find this page by looking for it under tutorials. And here we have the page inside our Shopify environment. When you build a complete page in Instant, you can add it as a page to your Shopify store, as I just showed. However, you can also export sections, which are individual parts of your page, and add them to your existing Shopify pages to extend your theme. So you can add a section to your product pages, the About page to your home page, or replace your entire home page with a few sections you've built in Instant. And to do this, you can hover over a section or select a section in the layer panel, right click and click on Save as Section. Then we have just created a section, as you can see right here in the Layouts panel. Let's give this section a name as well and call it tutorial. And then we can publish this section to our Shopify store by clicking on publish. And now that it's published, let's head over to our Shopify theme editor and, for example, add this section to our homepage. So here we are on our homepage, and then in the left we can click on add section. Let's search for the tutorial section. Here it is, and that's how you can add sections to your existing Shopify pages. The nice thing about our sections is that they are also editable from within the Shopify theme editor. So all the text properties and even the image are editable from within Shopify. For example, we have the CTA, feel awake today. We can change this in shop now. And that's how it works with publishing sections to your Shopify store. And this also brings us to the end of this course. So I hope you have a good understanding of our product and how it works together with Shopify, and good luck.